you're traveling for the Seattle calling and you've never been to Seattle before and you're feeling a little bit, daunted by it, or you're just looking for something fun to do to make sure that you have a good time over the weekend, I wanted to make this video. As someone who's lived in Seattle basically my entire life, I want to, put my city's best foot forward and give you an idea of what you might want to do while you're visiting. What's important to start out with is where you are. So you are basically in the heart of downtown. The convention center is in between three major parts of downtown. That's going to be Queen Anne, Capitol Hill, and Belltown. You're looking at mainly different types of dining options, nightlife, and entertainment here, and you're rubbing shoulders with the Space Needle, which is pretty cool. In terms of transportation, if you're coming from like the East Coast, you're going to be incredibly let down. We don't have like a very robust like transit system, metro, anything like that. We're slowly working on it, but we're decades away from something truly special. But we have transit options, so I want to list all of them here. There's just an easy link to go look at them. Most people would get around via the bus, so the King County Metro is like the most common thing. But you also have stuff like the Link Light Rail, which is also like very popular. Start out with Queen Anne. It's a little bit tricky because the whole Space Needle area is like in between Queen Anne and Belltown. So if you Google things to do in Queen Anne, it'll say like, oh, the Space Needle or the Chihuly Glass Garden. And if you look up things to do in Belltown, give you the exact same results. So it's kind of weird, but I threw all of these in the Queen Anne area. So Queen Anne is mainly like parks, dining, entertainment. The unfortunate part is you are visiting a very beautiful state at the time of the year that it's very miserable to be outside. So the sun sets at like 4, it's rainy right now. It's not really harsh weather conditions. If you're coming from the Midwest, like our winters are like, it never dips below, like 40 or whatever. It's mainly just kind of cold and wet. You're probably going to want to do a lot of indoor stuff. I did list a lot of outdoor activities just because like it's so beautiful here and I needed to list them. But in terms of indoor stuff to do, like these are all good options. So I've actually never been up the Space Needle despite living here my whole life, so I can't really vouch for it, but it seems like a very cool thing to do. So if that's something that you wanted to try, I can definitely speak on the Chihuly Garden and Glass, and then the Mopop Museum, so Museum of Pop Art and Culture. Ferry Park is where basically every single photo of Seattle is taken. So if you can go there during the daytime and it's not cloudy, you'll see the entire skyline plus the water plus Mount Rainier in the background. It's just absolutely jaw-dropping. It's not like a very difficult park to get to. You basically go into like almost a residential area and it's just kind of like a grass, like hill overlook kind of thing. But I wanted to at least like mention that one. These are definitely very fun indoor activities. The Glass Garden is by a local glass artist who's become very well known. His work is basically like throughout all of like this area. Like if you go to, like some high-end mall on the east side, you'll find one of his pieces just like in the Commons area. If you go down to Tacoma, there's a whole other glass museum with a lot of his work as well. The gardens, I think, are like the main premier presentation of his art. It's just so well integrated. It's a very beautiful thing to walk through. And the Museum of Art and Pop Culture has a lot of like rolling exhibits, but it's pretty geared towards like art, music, movies, video games, things like that. I think that most people watching this video would probably be interested in something like that. Like they had a Leica exhibit, for example, that I went to. So Coraline, Kubo, all of that. They had all of their set pieces, miniatures, like wireframes, all this kind of stuff. It was a really, really cool exhibit, but they'll even have, stuff covering like history of like Magic the Gathering, card games, D&D. There's a lot of different cool, movie set props, things like that. So I feel like that would probably be something pretty interesting. And then Belltown is where Pike Place Market is. It's your main, center of gravity, basically. It's a very cool area. So it's kind of labeled as very touristy, but I go there all the time. I've been there like multiple times, like in the past month. Like it's still a very cool place to go. You're going to find like really cool bars and dining options. The waterfront was a recent development. It's very, very beautiful. It's very fun to walk through, even if it is like cold and wet outside. It's also connected to the aquarium on the pier, and the pier itself is just very fun to walk through. Now, the only thing with like Queen Anne and Belltown is that they do kind of shut down a little bit early. Like I was out recently for a show in the Queen Anne area. Friends of mine were playing at a venue. We got out like 11 or 12, whatever. We were looking for a bar to go to, and just even like walking through the area, it's a little bit dead at night. So you're going to find a lot more daytime activities here, especially with like the market. The market shuts down at a certain time. So if you go there at night, it's kind of like empty, but during the day, specifically like the front part of the market is like super bustling. You'll see people, throwing the fish at the front. It's a very fun thing that they do. And you're gonna have a lot of like fresh baked food, things like that. And then it slowly dwindles out and then shuts down by the end of the day. So if you wanted to like wake up early and then check out the market before, like going to your side events or, maybe main event, if you wake up super early, then this is probably like where I would at least make sure you're going to, because this place loses energy throughout the day, if that makes sense. But if you're getting out of the venue late at night and you want to, go get like hammered or just like do some entertainment in the area, Capitol Hill is where the nightlife is. So while the other places kind of shut down at a certain time during the day, Capitol Hill is like still, like pumping at like 3 a.m. So if you want to do like a bar crawl, anything like that, just nightlife in general, that's where you want to go. And then they also have a free art museum as well, if that's something of interest. Other fun things that you can do in downtown, like if you just want to see something cool, would be like the Fremont Troll. Like we have a statue of a troll underneath the bridge you can get a photo with. That's kind of neat. There's the Museum of Flight and Aviation. It's right next to like the Boeing headquarters, which is pretty cool because you can see all the actual like Boeing planes in the yard, basically, doing test flights, take off, all that kind of stuff. And they have a big history, different airplanes. It's a very cool museum. I used to go a lot when I was a kid. I haven't been there in a long time though, so maybe it's lost its novelty to me, but I at least remember it being very cool. There's a pinball museum. I think you pay like a one-time entry and then you can just go in there and play, and it's like has a bunch of different decades of pinball machines. I thought it was like a cool thing to throw on here. There's 2 different Seattle art museums. There's a Seattle Asian Art Museum. I think they have a exhibit with Ai Weiwei right now. Fan of his work, so if you want to check that out. But then there's the standard Seattle Art Museum, and that's just in the heart of downtown. And speaking of museums, there's the Burke Museum. That's going to be on the University of Washington campus, which is actually where I went to school. Typically, if you're interested in seeing or understanding some of the native indigenous art, this would be big at the Burke Museum. I can't really speak for the other art museums. I just know the Burke Museum has like a good collection. It's a very like integral part of Pacific Northwestern culture and history. I mean, even the name itself, Seattle, carries that weight. So if that was something that was of interest to you and you just wanted to go see and experience it, can definitely vouch for the Burke Museum. And Discovery Park's a cool little overlook. I'm recommending Parks. It's like the worst time of the year to go to Parks, but if you have an umbrella and a jacket and you don't mind, I think Discovery Park's a really beautiful thing to check out. It's the Seattle Central Library, which to me is just such a cool architectural thing. It's very cool to be inside of. There's just so many things going on with the light and the windows, all that kind of stuff. So if you just want to sit in there for an afternoon or even like a morning, grab a book, whatever, it's a very cool thing to check out. There's some more gardens and parks here listed as well. Specifically, Gasworks Park is pretty cool aesthetically. Bad time to be outside, but if you can brave it, these are definitely cool things to check out. And speaking of outdoor things, I have to be obnoxious and just harp on how sweet the outdoors are here, because we have multiple national parks. There's Mount Rainier National Park, the North Cascades, and the Olympics. Specifically, Mount Rainier is the one that I feel like is probably the most accessible for people who are traveling. Like, you're not gonna be able to Uber here or anything like that. But if you like rented a car and you want to take like an extra day or something like that, you could drive down to the Mount Rainier National Park. The North Cascades are pretty far up going towards Canada, and then the Olympics, while very beautiful, are basically going inwards west. So you're getting further and further away from any part of the city, anything else you might want to do. It's very rural once you get out towards the coast. Mount Rainier is probably the easiest thing to get to within a day if you're in Seattle. But if you get to see it, I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. Now, to be fair, if you're in Seattle and it's not cloudy, you'll see Mount Rainier regardless. But if you can get up close and personal, it's a very beautiful thing. The Olympics are really cool though, because you're out near Forks and then Cape Flattery, so you're actually by the coast. This is a photo of me in the jacket. I'm like only barely in the photo. Not only do you get to go to Forks, which is just super beautiful, you get to see the Cascades. You're in the Olympic National Park. It's basically a rainforest at some points. It's very cool. A lot of the topography is like super varied. There's a lot of different biomes out here. So if you go east, you also hit like basically it's like a desert region as well. It's very, very cool living here. Just if you want to get around and travel and experience like what feels like an entire world inside of a state. But once you go out past the rainforests, you're going to hit the Cape, which is like the actual true edge of the map. So after that, it's just nothingness. It's just the void of the ocean until I believe you hit like Asia. If you wanted to just take a couple extra days and go through that whole area, incredibly beautiful. Not recommend it enough, but it's very out of the way. And then the North Cascades are like even more out of the way, unless if you're driving down, like from Canada, because it's all the way up north. And then, oh yeah, one more thing I threw on here is orcas. So if you've seen orca, you can come brag in the comments, because I've lived here my entire life and I still have yet to see one. They're basically like unicorns. It feels like that. Somehow like everyone's seen an orca in the wild, except for me. From what I've heard, they come to Seattle, they'll come to the waterfront. It's just somehow everyone gets to see one except for me. They're in the Tacoma like port, it doesn't matter. They'll show up wherever. So maybe you'll get lucky and see one. I listed some card shops with armories in the area. So if you're here for, a long extended period of time and you want something to do, the ones that are going to be closest to the venue are going to be Mox Boarding House and Tabletop Village, Monday nights and Friday nights. But I also want to give a shout out to Mindful Games down in Tacoma, and then the Missing Piece in West Seattle. And then this is probably the most important part for most people. I'm going to come back and update this as time goes on. So definitely check back in, like even day of or whenever you land in Seattle, check back on the dock, because I'm probably going to add more stuff. But I want to get some like cheap food, some expensive food, and then bar recommendations. And this is compiled from other people, just not just me. So these are not all my recommendations. I try to get a lot of different input on this without spending a whole bunch of time. Basically, Seattle is kind of like a tax haven for a lot of the large tech companies. So Amazon, Google, Microsoft, all that kind of stuff, they're all out here. By nature, in addition to a million other things, the costs of living have been pretty crazy. What I'm getting at here is when I say cheap food, that's in quotations. That's in quotations. So we have gas tax out here. Tax is really regressive. So it does really suck to not be insanely rich and live here. I wanted to at least, give what is considered cheap food options a fair shot. So Dick's and Taco Time specifically are like our local chains. So, if you're that kind of person where you're like, oh, I want to try like In-N-Out because that's like a chain that's not, where I'm from, or Culver's, anything like that. These are like the two that are like local to our area. Taco Time's kind of cool. It's Mexican fast food, but it's like local ingredients, which is pretty sweet. Dick's is like the quintessential like cheap burger that you get after like a show or a game at the stadium or whatever, like late at night at 1 a.m. And then the only other thing I gotta mention here is any teriyaki place. So that's a pretty cool little Seattle thing. And like obviously I know they exist in other places of the world, but for some reason, there's a stat. I don't remember. If I care enough, I'll add it to the video. But there's a stat where it's just like the the overall number of teriyaki places is like incredibly disproportionate in Seattle specifically. So it's just like a local, like cultural thing. Like it's just like good comfort food. You will find a bunch and they're all basically like the same in quality. Like you're not going to find like a bad teriyaki place. So it's just kind of cool the way it works. But I did at least vouch for one in particular. This one's like right in downtown. It's very, very close to the venue. The teriyaki is kind of cool. If you haven't really given it a shot, it's a thing for Seattle at the very least. I would say Seattle is mainly known for Asian food. So you're going to find a lot of like really good sushi and seafood in general, because we're close to like Alaska and all that. So you're going to find a lot of like freshly caught salmon. That's going to be like definitely in the higher end of kind of restaurants, though, where you're actually getting like market price fish that's like freshly caught, stuff like that. And then I listed a couple different very high end kind of food places if that's what you're into. And then just a couple different bar recommendations as well. So I try to at least cover some bases, but I'm going to go back and probably keep on adding to this. And if anyone has recommendations in the comments, please let me know. I'll just go ahead and throw them onto the dock. Hopefully this is enough to get you familiarized with the area. Hopefully you have a really fun time while you're out here for the calling. General, safety rules apply. Seattle is a very safe city. News networks love to sensationalize this place. It's perfectly safe. Just use normal common sense like you're in any other, metropolitan area, So just like if someone tries getting your attention on the street and you don't know who they are, you can ignore them. Like just trust your gut, basically, I've had no issues being laid out at night. Places like 3rd and Pike can become like a little bit sketch, especially like late at night. Just treat it like you're in any other city. Nothing is like out of the ordinary here. Overall, I think it's a really fantastic place. I love calling it home, and I hope that you have a good time over the weekends. Until next time, thank you for watching.